wellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
You're listening to A Quirky Journey, the healthy family podcast with your hosts Joe Witten and Fouad Kassab. Welcome to A Quirky Journey, and today we have a very special guest. Can you guess who it is? Dun, dun, dun.
I have no idea.
Pepper! You're back!
Yay! I am
I'm so happy.
back.
Every single person.
Thank you for having me back.
Is so happy. I've had so many messages saying, "Where is Tofu? I missed the banter."
Yes, I miss it too. That's why we're back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's been such a long time. It's been 6 months.
It has.
I think 6 or 7 months since I've done a podcast. My God, I've forgotten how to use this thing.
Well, I think we were going to have a chat about some childhood illnesses and boosting the immune system for winter and all of that kind of thing, because I've actually had a few people asking about how we can boost the immune system, and you've had a few things you've been going through in your home. So do you want to tell us about how things have been going there with the kids, because yours are younger than mine, and then we can talk about how to work on that.
Yeah, so I've got a bunch of stories. Obviously, I've been away for quite a while, but we've been dealing with Sophie's eczema. As you guys know, Sophie has, she gets really itchy. I've talked about this before on the podcast. And she was doing really, really well until she ate something that triggered her. And for a couple of nights in a row, she started scratching so badly that her eczema just got inflamed. Really, really bad. And we took her to the doctor just to make sure she's okay. And the doctor kind of panicked and said, "Oh, she might get infections, and so we need to put her on antibiotics." Now she's 6 years old, and when you have things like eczema and all that, from the perspective of like gut health and what we've talked about with gas practitioners, is the link between gut bacteria and your microbiome and things like allergies are irrefutable. The gut health is the barrier between the outside world and the inner world. And if that's compromised in its function, then it's going to inflame the body. And to give her extra antibiotics when she's already dealing with something that is related to gut health, so maybe the antibiotics would temporarily ease any kind of concern around an infection happening from the eczema. They would cause further damage to the microbiome because they disrupt the balance of bacteria in the gut. And this is something that we've been avoiding. Like Sophie was given antibiotics when she was born, and that she hasn't touched them since. She had low oxygen, and the doctors insisted that that she's that she might be in danger of dying, they said, if she doesn't have these antibiotics. So we took their advice, and Sophie's still with us. So thank you to those doctors who made sure that happened. But we are definitely dealing with the side effects of having a disrupted microbiome, which we still see in her asthma and her eczema. We deal with it with food and all that as much as we can, but sometimes she gets triggered environmentally or seasonally or through food or something like that. So we didn't really want to give her the antibiotics, but we were concerned that the infections might be problematic. But I've had personally such a long history of eczema and acne, that I know that when the doctors say here you have some antibiotics, that it's not the final thing to do, that there's stuff that can be done beforehand. And the way I used to deal with things when I would get inflamed, because I used to get eczema covering me head to toe and acne from head to toe as well. And it was vicious and, pussy and all that. And Sophie, in comparison, wasn't nowhere near as bad, really. And so I showed the photos to my brother-in-law, who's an endocrinologist, and a really good doctor as well. So he knows a lot about skin problems and things like that. And he said to me that we can deal with it with, topical creams. So we use some antibiotic creams, which is like Bactroban, and that was applied topically to the skin, which I feel far more comfortable putting that on the skin rather than ingesting antibiotic pills. And also some hydrocortisone, small amounts of that was used to just keep the itch away until she had the chance to recover in her system and back on really super clean food and broths and all that kind of stuff. And she's thriving once more, and we just needed, to give her that extra bit of attention. But the pain that we went through just morning and evening, looking after her wounds and dressing them and things like that for a week or so, which was, it adds a lot of stress because it takes a lot of time to do that, to wash her and and so that pain was definitely worth it, like for us, so that we don't have to give her antibiotics and for her to deal with that kind of ramifications from just having a further disrupted microbiome.
Yeah.
And during the same time, her sister got chickenpox.
No.
So Sarah had chickenpox, which she's immunized against. She's had the vaccine for, but she still got it. And apparently, the chickenpox virus is still something that you'll get, even though they give you the vaccine for. And they said that she got like the wild type of chickenpox. So we had this child with eczema and flaring up, and the other one had chickenpox, and so it was a bit of a rough week. So if I'm sounding tired, I'm sorry.
You poor thing.
But it's always hard to deal with.
That's long
the
work
most
hours.
energetic comeback for you guys. Yeah.
So this will be a short podcast, guys, but at least he's back.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought I'd share this about the eczema and doing it with topical creams, because Joe and I always talk about like the food, like food being medicine, and it is the case in our household. We eat a whole foods diet. We're just very careful with what Sophie eats, but at the same time, we're not on a strict GAPS diet, and we're more liberal and need to at some point really put her on a strict GAPS diet, but we just haven't found the mental space and the emotional space for it at the moment. So, because we've got our hands full with life.
And I think that's a good point, because you can't jump into something like that before the right time. Otherwise, you stress yourself out so much, you probably won't do that much good anyway, because the stress will be worse than doing the diet.
Definitely. And, we know that, Joe, from, failed projects that have happened, or like projects that have caused us a lot of stress. I wouldn't say failed, but things that have caused us stress is when we took on too much, and put ourselves on this strict rules, and we got to do this by then and all that kind of stuff. When you're already stretched, it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back.
You end up with adrenal fatigue and exhausted and
exactly
things.
So anyway, so I thought we'll talk about the creams a little bit, because I do use these things when need be.
You really have to,
and I think it's really important to talk about this, because Joan, you and I have like always, because we talk about natural healing and all that kind of stuff, I think people may assume that we're totally against medication when it's something that actually could save lives, and it does save lives, and it's absolutely necessary in certain instances, such as these ones. But for instance, you have to discern between going with like the what do you call it, sledgehammer to crack a nut or something, So like antibiotics are the big guns. You bring in the big guns when you don't need to. You can deal with Western medicine in a way that is predictable. Like it will sort of help with any infection that the skin may have had very effectively. And then now we're moving back to just a holistic approach and making sure that everything that we're doing here after the flare up is natural. We won't continue with Western medicine, and we just use it as a, for the right time and the right place, and for acute. That's right. Yeah.
Well, it's like, and we've always said that, like with Isaac, with his medication when he was so bad with OCD, until we got the gut health improved with the food, and then he could come off the medication. And there was a post in the chat group the other day, a lady's little boy with his lips all flared up with eczema really bad, and the same sort of thing. The recommendation was to use certain creams, and the poor kid was in agony. So you've got to do it, but then you also look at the root cause and start working on that. You're not going to just rely on...
I saw that one.
Yeah, you're not just going to rely on creams and antibiotics. Obviously, you've got to also work on the root cause at the same time. It's important to...
Yeah, I mean, you have to deal with the symptoms so that life can go on. But just do it in a way that's not going to be the ongoing crutch, because that's what happened to me, like for years and years and years. I was taking antibiotics every year. I was using hydrocortisone every year. And I was washing my skin with benzoyl peroxide or salicylic acid washes and, all sorts of washes to keep my infections down from my eczema.
Yeah. When
I eliminated the gluten, it went away. So there was an environmental trigger, and if you sort of constantly masking the symptoms by putting all the medication on, you probably will never get to the root cause. So it's really important. Then that's when you move, after you've dealt with the symptoms, you move to a whole foods diet. You start looking at elimination diets to see which foods are triggering you. And once you need to, if you need to, you go to something like GAPS for deeper healing. And that's a really good approach to it.
Yeah.
But you also had a question about immune system. What do you do for the immune system?
Well, when I'm really thinking about it, you know how you go through weeks where you just feel like, oh yeah, we're all fine, we're all good, and you sort of like always, like you, eating whole foods, but sometimes you're just a little bit more flex than other times. And when we start getting people around us with the colds and the flus, it's like, we better start, boosting the immune system here. So the first thing I always think of is meat stocks. And Elise actually had a really good article the other day on the difference between meat stocks and bone broths, and why meat stocks are so good for gut health. So I might actually put the link to that one in the notes, because that's really good to read that. A lot of people get confused with that.
But that's good for the immune system as well?
Yeah. And so when you've got a healthy gut, you're much more likely to sorry, my computer's popping up with messages. Okay. When you've got a healthy gut, you're much more likely to be able to fight off the viruses and the things. I think people are not aware that the bacteria in our gut actually contribute to our immune system. They're part of it. That's right. And so so that's always the first thing for me, is working on gut health. So we get more meat stocks in, plenty of veggies. And sometimes you do get slack with the variety of veggies and the fresh veggies and the leafy greens and all that. And then you start getting them back in your diet, like with this recipe that I made for dinner tonight with the fir. And you're just like, oh, that is just so, like, it's like your body craves it, and you need it. Because it can get really busy and you just have I'll just grab carrots, potatoes, some frozen peas, and you just like get really slack. But it doesn't take that much more effort to chop up some leafy greens and mushrooms and things like that. I also try to have more fermented food. to work on boosting the immune system. So we've gotten the sauerkraut back to the front of the fridge and spooning that out at every meal.
Yeah.
And also the fire tonic, which is swigging that down. What else are we doing?
Which is like an apple cider vinegar base.
Yeah, with all the chili and the herbs.
With chili and
that one's actually a bought one by Hillbilly. Is it Hillbilly Foods?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hillbilly cider.
They're really good. My sister makes her own, and she brings some over sometimes, and she's told me given me the recipe, but I haven't gotten around to it. But and also sauerkraut juice, sipping that, because it's super high in vitamin C. Taking kakadu plum powder, which is also really high in vitamin C. And Simi has been doing all sorts of things because his health hasn't been great. So he's been doing a lot more than the rest of us. So he's, taking cod liver oil and the kakadu plum powder and broccoli sprout powder and all sorts of things. And he's like, I saw a difference within a week and a half with him taking all those supplements as well as eating well. So it's, you can really...
Can you tell us about that, this vitamin C that you mentioned? What was it?
Kakadu plum powder. That's also one that you can get through Elise. She's got it in her shop, and it's like the highest vitamin C you can get, and it's Australian, yay! So this is a good way to have vitamin C in a whole food way, right? Because it's sort of not an isolated, synthesized form or anything like that. It's just no sweeteners,
made by nature.
Yeah, no gums and whatever's in there. It's just kakadu plum dried and ground up, as far as I know. It's a really good thing to take. Lemon in water. India's drinking a lot of ginger tea. She just slices up the fresh ginger, and she's constantly drinking that because she's had the cough. So that's another thing. And then, of course, all the soups with the ginger and garlic and turmeric and fresh herbs and lemon and even like just I put the chicken broth when I make a chicken stock. I put it into small containers in the freezer, and then I'll just pull one out, thaw it in a little pan on the stove, and add a good squeeze of lemon juice, a sprinkle of fresh herbs or dried if I don't have any fresh ones, or if it's raining too hard and I don't want to go to the garden. Some salt and pepper and a bit of fresh minced garlic. And that's kind of like a quick soup, very light, when you don't really feel like eating, but, you need to put something in. So we've been having a bit of that as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's such a good... well, I have a different approach.
Okay.
So I love your approach because yours is like completely food based. Like it's just the foods, right?
Yeah.
Like this is, and so mine is more about herbs. So I really, me, I love herbal remedies and things like that. So I guess they are food, right? Yeah? But sort of taken more medicinally, find them to be extremely powerful. Like I'm really, really getting into medicinal herbs and learning about them. And I've learned so much recently about them, and also about how to sort of listen to my body as it responds to the action of herbs. It's been really, really great. But I'll just say a few things before I get into the herbs. Is like doing if you start feeling that your throat is getting like swollen, or there's something going on that you might be getting a cold. You know how like one of the worst things about getting a cold is the infection going to the throat, and then you have to deal with the throat thing and just a salt water and a sodium bicarbonate gargle is really, really good. But also an iodine gargle is really good. Like you can get betadine gargles from the chemist, but you can also use iodine drops in water, like make a strong concentrate and just gargle with that. And the salt water and bicarb is really good. And I find that in most cases, if you get the cold at that stage, it stays away. Like if you start to feel that your throat there's something funny going on with it, and you do a gargle, it stops it from really like taking hold. That's been my experience, or at least lessens the symptoms, so that when you do get a cold, you're not having to deal with like a really painful throat. Because that's one, like I hate that the most about getting a cold is when my
I actually
that's a
forgot
really
to
good,
do that this time when I got a cold. I completely forgot about the gargling, and yesterday I was looking up my recipe for healing chicken soup, and it's got all the tips for when you've got a cold, and it had the gargling one there, and I was like, oh yeah, forgot about that. I should have read my own.
Yeah, so yes, you should, because it's so good, right? Like it's just so powerful to gargle, and just 3 times a day or more if you have to. It's just really, really good. That's one of those things that you do as a precaution. But then there's also a bunch of herbs that help the immune system, or some different approaches. Like one approach is geared towards the immune system, so just things that will help with the immunity, and I'll talk about that in a second. But also there's the anti-inflammatory. So if you're having anti-inflammatory herbs, inflammation, when your body isn't having to deal with inflammation, then the immune system is automatically stronger. So it can sort of partition more energy towards the immune system. So that means if you're supporting your body in reducing the inflammation, and that then you're doing a good job for the immune system, it'll boost your immune system automatically. And that could be, people talk a lot about turmeric, and it's a very powerful anti-inflammatory. It's an amazing anti-inflammatory actually. And I get this brand of turmeric. I got one recently, and I can't say I get it. Like I bought one recently, which I'm very happy with, from a website called Austral Herbs. So it's AUSTRAL herbs.com.au, and they sell this organic, extra potent, like it's a really dark turmeric, and apparently it has a higher concentration of the anti-inflammatory compounds in it, and it's really affordable as a spice. And if you use it regularly, you get the benefit, and it's easy to use regularly because I make a tea, say in the morning, a chai in the morning, and a chai in the evening, and I'll put a little bit of that in there. So it's just a very easy place to sort of have your turmeric. If you're making soup, we love having coconut milk in the soup. Like just adding that in a chicken soup will be a delight. Then you can add a little bit of turmeric in there as well. So that's a good place to have it. You can put it in your bliss balls. That's an easy way. So if the spice is too strong for you, I find having it with other sweet things, or cacao and that kind of stuff, it helps with people who can't handle too much spice. So I'm not sure if you got that last bit, but like a bliss ball is a good way to put your spices in. Like if you want to have sort of a constant dose of spice, you can sort of mask it with other flavors in the bliss ball. And one other thing that I really, really love is medicinal mushrooms. There's a lot of science around the Ganoderma species, things like reishi, and also mushrooms like lion's mane and chaga, that have a huge amount of research behind them and some really amazing effects on the body. And they have these adaptogenic qualities, and an adaptogen is a very peculiar type of compound or food, or if in this instance it's usually in the form of tincture or an extract or something like that they do from these mushrooms. And the way that the adaptogen works is, if your immune system is hyperactive, which a lot of people with autoimmune diseases have, it helps bring the immune system down to a normal base. And if your immune system is low, and you're more susceptible to diseases and colds and flus and things like that, and it brings it up, which is most like Western medicine it has one direction usually. So it's not. This is the properties that we find in foods. We find that foods have these adaptogenic qualities. They regulate the system rather than push it in one direction or not the other. So this is why things like mushrooms are really good. So there's, I know Paul Stamets has a. Let me. I should have really looked this up before the blog post. But there's a guy called Paul Stamets who is one of the leading authorities of, if not the leading, he must be the leading authority on mushrooms in the world. He's actually the guy that the latest Star Trek that is on Netflix. They went and consulted him about how he would envisage. This mycelial network, he called it, like this,
okay.
The entire universe is connected through like a mycelial network, which is like the roots of a mushroom.
Yeah.
So he's a very cool dude, and he has really high quality extract of mushrooms. Let me see.
You mean that you can buy?
Mushroom. Yes, that's right. You can buy it from iHerb.
Okay.
And they're called Host Defense.
Oh yes, I've heard of them.
So you can,
probably from you.
Get it from iHerb. Yeah, it's really really good. So this is like I like the tincture, which is like it's extracted in alcohol. So for kids, maybe not a good idea. You can get the capsules and just sort of pour those into the smoothies and things like that. But I think that, like, personally, I really like tinctures because they're very more potent, because they become more bioavailable. Like the body can absorb them much more readily. So that's a good way to have it. And you can just use these ongoing. There's really no limit to how much you can have.
It's not like you can overdose on it.
No. And it is expensive. It's not cheap, so you want to use it as a supplement, and I think it's a really good one, really good one. Like things like I think lion's mane. I believe in China, from what I've read, is that they use it as they prescribe it to cancer survivors. Like it's part of the regimen that, like, in the government, they're like, okay, this is what we do. You go through chemotherapy and all that, and you get lion's mane mushroom because
it's a ability to help the immune. As a mood booster, because I've been looking up what kind of foods help with mood boosting, and they say that lion's mane, I've got it here, has a remarkable ability to synthesize the peptide nerve growth factor, NGF, which is necessary for the growth and survival of brain neurons and contributes to mood improvement. So it may also reduce your risk of depression. So there you go. Interesting.
Yes. Well, really, definitely. And it's definitely a wise choice for mood. I would agree with that. All these mushrooms have a really profound impact on the body. So there's those two, and of course there's ginseng, which is really the most revered herb in China, or traditional Chinese medicine, and that is known to have like a stimulant, immune boosting effect on the body. It gives you like vitality and strength. And I think traditional Chinese medicine, they talk about increasing qi, which is like the energy within the body. And there's an Indian, I wouldn't say equivalent, but equally revered in the Ayurvedic tradition. There's a herb called Ashwagandha, which is, that one is also really, really great. And you can buy all these things from this place, Austral Herbs. That's where I get mine from. Every time I bought something from there, it really felt very, very fresh. And they have immune boosting qualities, as I said, like the curcumin, or the turmeric, and those two herbs that I mentioned, you can get from there. For mood, St. John's wort is really, really a great one. So if you haven't started using that one, it's really good. So I would suggest
I find when you do get sick, isn't it interesting how a lot of the same things that boost the immune system also boost the mood, which when you get sick, you need both because you feel really down when you feel dreadful.
Sure.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes, feeling down makes you sicker, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So it goes that way too. Like people who your immune system gets depressed when your mood is depressed as well.
Yeah, that's true.
It goes hand in hand, and it's a good idea to help both. And it's really important. It's a very, very important thing to look after your mental health and your physical health. They're one and the same. You can't really say the mind is separate to the body. They're the same. And these plants are incredible because they come packaged with things like how amazing is it they actually work. Like that you take a plant and then there are chemicals in it that are so complex, yet they have a profound and exact role to play within the body. And it's to me that's an amazing thing. And people who don't believe in plant medicine are just must be joking because most of our
first came from. I mean,
that's right.
Yeah. I tell you what,
but with the protective qualities, which is really what's important. Is that
Well, like you were mentioning in an old podcast about, you might want to mention that again about, I think it's willow bark. Is that the one that has?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's one of my favorite examples on, they extracted salicylic acid, which is what they make aspirin from, out of the willow tree and the willow bark. And this white willow has a lot of salicylic acid in it. But the problem was, first of all, it's a plant, so you can't really put a patent on it. And then, of course, they wanted to be able to say, okay, well, this much salicylic acid, to put that in a pill, we can say it's that many, micrograms of the compound, or, is it milligrams? I don't know how they measure salicylic acid. But let's say it's milligrams. And they basically can standardize the dose, right? Which is a good idea. But by refining it, it's almost like refining sugar out of a beet. So when you got a beet, it's got fiber in it, and the fiber protects you from overconsumption, for one thing, and also slows down the digestion of the sugars, which means that your blood sugars are regulated more tightly when you eat a whole food. And it's the same thing with the stuff that, the white willow that they got the aspirin out of. So they refined it into the white powder that it is aspirin. And when you take it, sure, it has the impact of salicylic acid on the body, but salicylic acid on its own causes distress to the gastrointestinal tract. So your intestines, a lot of people will have bleeding in their guts from taking too much aspirin. So people need to take a break, or they need to take it with, smaller doses, and it's something with a side effect. Whereas if you have it in the form of white willow bark tea, which is disgusting, it doesn't taste good at all. But in that form, it has the tannins, which are those bitter flavors that you have in the bark, but they are protective of the gastrointestinal tract. So they decrease the symptoms or the side effects that you'd have from salicylic acid, because you're having it in a whole food form. So that's, such wisdom is in these plants. And when we start moving away from plant medicines to isolates, sure, we have things that can be dosed and things that are incredibly more powerful in terms of their dosage, but that also comes with side effects that are very undesirable, which makes Western medicine unsuitable for ongoing use. It's just not good. It will cause side effects, and that's where relying back on prevention through herbal medicine and through a whole food diet a much better way forward.
Yeah, it's like where the bulk of your medicine should come from should be from your food and from, the environment. But then, like you say, the acute medicine, when you have to get some extra help from Western medicine, that's okay.
Totally.
It's not that you're bombarding your body with it constantly. That's when it becomes a really big problem.
And it's very different. Like, it's very different. Like, every night I'll have a tea that I make from at least 15 different herbs or something.
Wow.
Like, I actually mix my own stuff now. And I love it.
You're going to have a fufu tea blend sometime?
Yeah, I should. Hey, I was talking about it with Lainey because, this stuff, you can feel it like buzzing through your body. It's just really, really great. And when you go to bed, you have like really nice deep sleep. It's really. And then for the morning, I'm using stuff that sort of gives you a bit more pep, which is really good. So,
well, you'll have to tell us some of your favorite blends, or
I was thinking of putting them all in like little bliss balls, and just having
that would be cool.
Like, imagine that, and going to a shop and just instead of having a caffeine shot in the morning, you have your your ginseng bliss ball with a few extra things in there.
Yeah,
and that sort of becomes your don't you think? I'll talk to Helen from see if they can do it for us.
I'll tell you what, I've got this book that I just recently got that I think you'd like, that you're reminding me of. It's a spice book. Have you heard of The Science of Spice?
No.
It's a big hardcover book. It's pretty new, and it's one of those DK books, and it's got all the pictures and the little graphics and everything, and it goes through each spice and tells you the compounds in it and what it does.
Wow.
What's the best ways to mix it with different spices for different flavor compounds, and how to use it in food. And it's just fascinating. I think you'd love it. But I would love to see. Yeah. But it's just,
but look, I just want to warn that we can't really look at plants through the lens of Western medicine, because it's just it's not they don't work that way. You can't have like someone having sickness X, and you give them this herb, and then the same person with the same sickness, that herb might not work on them.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, and it's not down to a single molecule in the herb that makes it work. It's the host of molecules. It's the host. The entirety of the plant is actually taking action, not just salicylic acid.
Yeah.
And the white willow bark. And I think that's sort of a really important thing is if you're starting your journey into herbal medicine, or you're expanding into it. It's just important to sort of make that distinction that because of our westernized viewpoint, we might have the tendency to look at it from a reductionist perspective. And it's something that will be doing your journey with herbal medicine a disservice, because it's much bigger than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just getting such a wide variety of whole foods and healing foods into your diet is just such an important thing. And like I was saying earlier about getting stuck on certain dishes and certain foods, you can see how many things you're missing out on when you start talking about all the goodness in different herbs and different things that you wouldn't use.
Right.
You're missing out on so much that could be boosting your immune system and helping your mood and doing all sorts of things for you.
It's amazing. I've seen people do an hour-long lecture on lemon balm. Things that you think is just like, that's a tea, or things like that. These are like, even rosemary is a medicinal herb. People don't realize that. And this stuff is powerful, and if used ongoing, it has a really great ongoing effect on the body. So it's not something that you take immediately see the benefits. Some of them are like that, sure. Some have short-term effects, and then they build up to longer-term effects. But you have to give it, time to build up. But Joe, how who did we interview? I can't remember. We interviewed someone about the diets of tribal people, and they had something like 150 different species that they ate.
The doctor down in Tassie, what was his name? And he was talking about the importance of trying to get like 40 different plants into your diet each week. Like, try to aim for that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, like, imagine that. Right? Like, imagine 40 different plants, and like they don't even classify things like Brussels and cabbage as two different plants. Almost, but they're the same plant. And so, it's I think that's where herbal medicine in the form of food, where it starts actually taking a big part of your diet in the form of teas, or you add it to soups and things like that. It starts actually being part of your life. It has a profound impact on the diversity of foods that you're having, which then impacts your gut bacteria and your immune system, and then introduces all sorts of powerful medicinal components into your body that help you feel better, move better, think better. It's incredible.
Jason Horrelack.
And
sorry.
Dr. Horrelack.
Dr. Jason Horrelack. Yeah, and that's actually a good podcast to listen to if you want to think about this in a very practical way, because you can sort of get overwhelmed with it and go, oh, it's so sciencey, I don't know how to add those things in, and just sort of stick with what you know. But really, he just talks about just get in as much variety of plants as you can, like go grow herbs and put them into your food and just have fresh herbs in there. And, you can obviously get right into it like Fouad does and research it all and learn about it. But, yeah, just getting more fresh veggies and herbs into your diet will just help so much with your immune system.
And also, it's worth really thinking about this, like the value or the price that we put on foods, like, a kilo of, not even a kilo, half a kilo or 250 grams, I think, I can't remember, of ginseng, Korean ginseng, is something like $60. I think it's $60 for 250 grams. So it's super, super expensive. Does that mean it's a more important herb than ashwagandha, which is far cheaper? No, it doesn't mean that. It's just a matter of supply and demand. It's a matter of how hard it is to procure the stuff and grow it, and how many people are trying to buy it in the world. And so the exotics that quite often, people will say this, Manuka honey is better than, it's one of the best honey in the world. It is amazing, but like a wild Australian honey is equally as good, if not better, because it actually has an expression of your local environment. So if you live in Australia, and so don't be, like unless you feel attracted to a herb for some reason, and a lot of herbalists will move based on their, like this, I feel this herb is going to be helpful to this person, and they might not have like a logical rationalization for it, but it's just their experience and their intuition. And if you feel attracted to a herb through your intuition, then definitely look into it. But the ones that are around the corner and easily available are quite often very well suited to help you.
Well, that's so interesting. We should probably finish up because I think we went longer than half an hour.
I think so. We're like, what are we going to talk about? We don't have any guests.
I said to my husband, we're going to have a half-hour podcast. He went, yeah, right, and walked out of the room.
Yeah.
Right. I know you.
Love it. Yeah.
Oh, well, it was fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, let's do it again sometime. Maybe
let's do
next time. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming back to chat with us, and hopefully
I'm back.
For good, except when you're travelling in Lebanon.
Back for good.
Oh, no, he's going to sing.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
We actually did miss you too.
Yeah. You know what? Like, I'm so unready for this podcast because I'm in the garage. Like, I have a studio in the garage. That's like, I'm not in the garage. It's a beautiful place. I love it. It's our music room. But
it isn't just a car garage. It's like a room that's made out of a garage.
Yeah, it used to be a garage. It's been converted into a music, room. It's beautiful. Yeah. Definitely, it's nice. But it has a blow heater, and I didn't want to turn the blow heater on, so I'm actually sitting all rugged up. Like if you saw me, you'd just see my lips move.
Just take
That's how I look like
for us.
Yeah, I'll send it to you now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So that's how I've been recording the podcast. If I sound sort of like
muffled,
I'm actually in a parka, it's because I am in a parka.
Oh, that's hilarious. Well, I've got stuff strewn all over my bed because I'm in the middle of packing, and it's now 10 p.m. So I really should go finish packing because I leave at 6:30.
At 10 p.m. Holy moly!
I know.
All right.
I know. It's getting past our bedtime.
All right. Okay, cool, guys. Hopefully, if my schedule comes in, I'll be on the next podcast with you. Everything's good. And I'm happy to be back. Thank you for having me back on the show after such a long time.
I'm giggling at your photo.
Oh, yeah. That's what I look like, Jen. All right. Cool. I'll chat to you guys later.
All right. Have a good sleep. Thanks, guys, for listening, and we'll chat to you in a couple of weeks. Okay, bye.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.